Have you ever looked at your stash and wondered, what am I going to do with all of this fiber? As I was looking through all of this fiber, that most of was in my stash, I thought, I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends that dye fiber. I have a lot of friends that raise fiber. And I'm really excited to see how I can incorporate all of their fibers into a really amazing sweater. And so I pulled out all of my wool and I dug through it, and that evolved into something more than I was ready for, but I'm really excited to see how it all comes together. I'm Greg Padgett with Plaid Perch Farm, and today we're going to spin a sweater. So we're going to start with the fiber. I'm going to tell you all about it, and there's a lot of community that goes into the sweater. This is going to be a three-part video. So the first one, we're going to look at our fibers. We're going to figure out how much we need for the sweater. We're going to figure out what sweater pattern to make. Then we're going to spin it, and then we're going to knit it. So this is a slow process. It's not going to happen overnight, but this is the first step. So I hope you'll come along with me. I'm going to talk about these fibers in a little bit, but I wanted to talk about picking a pattern first, because trying to figure out a pattern to spin for kind of was a little bit daunting. I went through my Ravelry queue, or my favorites, and looked through different sweaters to see what ones. I wanted to look in a DK weight, because a DK is kind of my default, something that is going to be spun in kind of a woolen spun, because again, that's my default. So if I'm going to spin thousands of yards of yarn, I want something that is a little more comfortable, a little more in my default area. So I looked through and I stumbled upon this pattern that I've had saved for a while, called Byron by Natasha Hornby. And who doesn't love a bearded man carrying an axe? So that also caught my attention, not gonna lie. So some things about this pattern: it's in a DK weight. The recommended yarn is a sport weight and a lace weight that's held double. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to spin a 2-ply DK weight yarn and use that. But I really like the texturing in this, because that really gives some forgiveness in the using the hand spun. I also really love the ability to blend some colors. You can see I've got some blues and some oranges and auburns and greens and grays. So I've got a really array of really beautiful colors that can go into this. So I feel like I can be really inspired and really build a lot of creativity with this pattern. And it also is available in my size. That's one of the hard things with finding written patterns, is they aren't always available in my size. That's one of the first things I have to look for is this pattern even in my size? Is it within the realm of possibility? So this one really fit all of those pieces. And so I was really excited. So I bought the pattern and started looking at the first step of, do I have enough fiber? Figure out our grist. And what our grist is basically our yarn density. So it helps us determine how much weight do we need to get the yardage that we need. A book that I used to help kind of figure out the first steps, or the steps to putting together this sweater project, was Yarnitecture by Jillian Moreno. It is a really helpful book. She talks about trying to spin for a specific yarn, talks about a lot of different spinning styles, just a really broad and detailed book in the same. So I really enjoyed that. So part of that was looking at the grist. And so I needed to figure out how many yards per, typically is yards per pound, but this time I wanted to do grams. I like to measure in grams. I feel like it's an easy measurement. It's a little more precise for me than ounces, and it's one that I use a lot in my fiber business. So what I did was I figured out so first I looked to see how much yarn do I need to knit this pattern. So I've picked out the pattern, and now I know that my size, I need 885 yards in the main color, the first main color, 830 yards in the second main color, and 207 yards in the contrast color. So altogether, I've got a little over 1,900 yards that I need for this pattern. The pattern I'm using recommends Merino Shetland blend as the sport weight, and then alpaca as the lace weight. And so those are going to be very different, and trying to calculate the grist based off of that was kind of boggling my mind a little bit. So I kind of stepped back and just went to the basic with, okay, a DK weight is about 2.5 yards per gram. So with that, I calculated how many grams I needed to get the recommended yardage. And then what I did was I added 35% to that. So all in all, I need at least 478 grams of my first main color, 448 grams of my second main color, and then 110 of my contrast color. And I already know that I'm going to have multiple contrast colors, so I'll probably be over that for sure, because I want to have some extra yardage to fluctuate, and so I can adjust those colors based on how they knit up together. I did this math to figure out, okay, now this is what I need. So now we could go back and measure each of the batches of yarn, or the batches of fiber, to figure out, okay, if I put these colors together, that will give me enough volume to reach this color. And so that was what I'm going to use when I am selecting the colors to blend together, to see, do I have enough of each of these, enough supply of each of these colors. If I blend them together to become the main color 1 or the main color 2, do I have enough of that to produce the yardage I need? Because the fiber in this sweater is so important and filled with so many stories, I want to go through and introduce you to the different fibers that I am planning to incorporate into the sweater. I'm going to look through these colors and different fibers, and then kind of pick my colorway. I kind of have an idea already, but I think as I start to look at these colors, I'm going to start to see how they worked really well together. So let's start with some introductions. So you've heard me talk about Susie at Fiber MacGyver. She is just one of the sweetest, kindest humans I've ever known, and her family reflects the same. They're all just really wonderful people. And so I wanted Susie to be part of this because she just means a lot to me. And so she doesn't dye fiber, she dyes yarn. And I use her yarn and I love her yarn. But I asked her if she'd do me a favor and dye, so if I sent her a couple bats, if she would dye the fiber. And she said yes. And oh, did it fill my heart. And then I met up with her at Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, and she showed me the dyed bats, and it was even better than I imagined. So this is a blend of Frida, one of my Shetlands, some Cormo from my neighbor Regina at Esther Pearl Fibers, Dory, which is one of my Romadale CVMs, and Todd, which is a BFL from one of my mentors, Kate, who is she primarily raises Shetlands, but has a couple other wethers in her flock, and Todd is one of those. And so I blended these together and I sent them to her, and oh my God, look at this. Beautiful greens and oranges and browns, and just these beautiful bits all throughout here. And so this I will recard, and I'll blend it with something else, possibly. I'm not sure yet. We'll see how this all goes. But I just love all of the colors in this. My first off vision for this color is the trim work. I think this would be really great in the collar and the cuffs and the waistband of the sweater. So we'll see. We'll see how this all comes together. This is all comb top that I hand combed. And it looks a mess. And the reason it looks a mess, and it's not these beautiful, fluffy, worsted nests, is because I did not scour this fully. So this is a fleece that I bought from my friend Melissa Wubbin at Oak Creek Farm, and she's become an amazing mentor to me. She raises Romadale CVMs and Romneys. And so I've acquired some sheep. My recent acquisition of Marshall came from her flock. And so this actually is Marshall's mom. This is Eris, and she is one of the first full fleeces that I bought. So before I had Romadale CVM, I bought this fleece from Melissa. I scoured it. It was one of the first full fleeces I scoured, and then I hand combed everything, and I knit a sweater for my husband out of it. And so I had this fiber left, and I went back to it, and I was feeling it, and I'm like, this is not washed well. Like, it was sticky, and I could still feel that lanolin in it, which tells you that it's totally okay to spin wool with some lanolin in it. But that I had hand combed, so my combs are a lot easier to clean that lanolin off than my drum carder. And so this is all going to go through my drum carder. So I did not want to have that lanolin in it. So I did a quick rescour of it, and it's ready for the drum carder. So this is going to be another color inside in this sweater. So recently at the Fall Fiber Fest in Hopkins, Minnesota, one of my new friends, Patty from Holly Ridge Farm, was there selling some of her Leicester Longwool fibers. And Patty I met through my friend Trinity at Pedal and Hank at the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival last year. And she was there for the Leicester Longwool. They had a special show that year at the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool. And so I got to meet Holly, and she's just incredibly sweet. And when I was at the Fall Fiber Fest, she had her Leicester Longwool roving, so a 4-ounce bump. And knowing that I have some long wools with that BFL and that mystery wool already in this mix that I wanted to blend, I thought this would be a great addition to it. And it brings in a really beautiful gray that will add a really fun heather to this yarn blend. And so I bought this so I can mix this in. So I'm excited to see where this is going to fall into the mix. So the first one is the main color, my lighter color. So I want my two main colors to have some good contrast. And so I'm going to focus on these grays. And so this is the CVM, and then this is the Leicester Longwool. So I want to put those two together because I want to maintain the fineness of the CVM and a little bit of the longer staple of the Longwool, because I think that that's going to create a consistent fiber throughout. So what I did was I carded up a couple samples. So this one is a sample of these two carded together with about 10% of Leicester Longwool and then 90% of the CVM. And it's pretty happy how that turned out. I think it looks like a nice fiber. But then I wanted to see, what if I added a little bit of brown? And so I took some of my Shetland comb top. I have some beautiful Morit Shetland comb top left from a batch I did a couple years ago. And so I blended that together, and I'm pretty happy with that. You can see the difference here of these two, and this one has a little more brown, which I think might be a really good kind of build some continuity in the colors in this project. So I'm going to spin both these samples and see how they spin up, and then see how they work together in the full project. This one has a little more of the browns in it, which I ended up liking. And then this one is just the grays with the Leicester Longwool and the CVM. And I ended up liking the look of this yarn better, and the brown flecks in it. So I ended up using that one primarily. Fossil Fibers and Bricolage Studios both are friends of mine. They're in Michigan. They dye up and process these beautiful fibers, and they actually did a collaboration where they created these carding kits together, and there are so many fun things in them. So this blue just was an inspiration. Like I just instantly fell in love with this blue color. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it is gorgeous. So in here you'll see all these really amazing blues and blacks and bluish grays that are mixed in with the Shetland base. There's these really luscious Wensleydale locks. And then there is this bamboo, which is just has a beautiful sheen to it, and some silk oil. So for today, for this sweater spin, I'm actually going to take these out. So I don't think these are going to fit into my sweater plan as much as I'd like. So I'm probably going to take these out and use them in a different way. So I'll throw those over here. And so this is the Shetland in these really beautiful colors. So I definitely want to use those. And those inspired this blue color. And so here's where I went a little off script and I did some dyeing to really incorporate into the sweater. It started as something that I was going to just use stash, and then it evolved into asking Susie to dye some fiber. And then as the idea came together, I wanted to add more friends into it. And so I had fleeces from other friends that were maybe a natural color that I wanted to do some dyeing and breathe some different life into it. And so I have some dye tinctures from Abundant Earth Fiber, and Lydia and her husband there make these really beautiful, really easy to use dye packs. So they're an acid dye, but it's all pre-mixed, and so it's kind of like a tea bag, and you drop it in, you add your fiber, and heat it up, and it works. It's really fun. So that's how I started dyeing, and then I moved to natural dyes. But I'm not opposed to acid dyes because I think it used well and appropriately, they can be a good a balance. And so this is some of Eris's fleece, some of that comb top that I dyed, and I've kind of picked it open. So I added that in. Then I brought in some of this really beautiful Cormo. And again, this is from my neighbor Regina over at Esther Pearl Fibers. And so I combed up some of her white Cormo, and then I acquired at one of her shearings because we do a partner shearing where I am able to bring some of my sheep, and then I help them with their shearing of their sheep, and we can get it all done at the same time. So I brought this fleece home from that, and then again, those long wools, I wanted to add that in. And so this is Todd, the BFL from Kate. And so I dyed up some of his fleece in this beautiful blue. A really beautiful sheen on that, really beautiful dark blue. And then this one is kind of a funny one. This is a mystery fiber. Our local guild, our spinning and weaving guild, hosted kind of a garage sale. It had a number of fibers that and tools and yarns that were donated from a couple of states. As people had passed, they donated them to the guild to help pass those on to those that would really value and appreciate them. And so this was one of the mystery fleece that nobody knew. It wasn't marked, so nobody knew what it was. But let me pull it out here. It started as this beautiful brown, and it's a little bit coarser, so it's not a super fine wool, but it has beautiful crimp. It's really lofty, so I think it'll be a nice addition to this. So I took this one, so I washed up this fleece, and I carded it, and then I pulled some of it and dyed it in the locks in this beautiful blue. And so those are all kind of a base of a blue that I'm envisioning for this sweater. So I think that these blues are really going to look great with the fleece kits. Blending them in with these blues from Emily and Corey. So I think these are going to work really well. I think what I'm going to do is blend these colors together and omit the black at this time. And see, once I card those together, see what that color comes out to be. Because maybe that's where I want it to be. But if I want to make it a little bit darker, I know that I've got these blacks that I can add in and blend those in to really darken that up. another thought is to add in this CVM. This braid is from my friend Corinne at Crosswinds Farm, and this is a Ramadale from her flock. It's a sheep named Midnight, and it is a really beautifully heathered brown. It's just a really stunning color, and this is all I have left. Corinne is just a really sweet person. I met her through my friend Kate, and just really got to know her well. Has a beautiful fiber flock. She's just a really genuine, sweet person. And so I always enjoy time to chat with her. This Ramadale, because I think that this would be really add a fun heathering throughout this yarn. So that's kind of the plan I'm thinking for the blue. So with the blues, what I did was I prepared all of these so they're ready to be blended. So the ones that were still in lock form, I carded, or I combed those to open those up. So these two are the Fossil Fiber and Bricolage Studio carding packs. And so in here you'll see it's really beautiful blue. And I'm really happy. That's just such a happy color for me. I think it might come across a little purple, but it's just this really beautiful blue. And then this is the one, as we were going through the fibers, I was calling black. And once I opened it up, I realized that those colors kind of changed. And so it's a really deep blackish blue. So I was gonna wait and mix that in later, see how these colors come together, but I think it's gonna be really great now that I've opened it up. So I have all of these, I weighed them out, 308 grams total. So what I did was I calculated the percentages of each of these in the proportions to the mix. And so what I did was I took each of those times 20. So now here I've got a 20 gram sample. And so the next step is to run these through my carder and see how these all blend together. So now in the sweater, there's a series of striping across the chest and around the arms that I want to see how I can incorporate in some really fun colors. Kind of fibers that speak to my beginning of this journey of spinning and processing wool. And so this here is a braid that's been kind of chopped up. It was one of the first braids that I spun. So it was definitely a learning. You can actually see I have some twisted up fiber in there. So apparently I was spinning this on something. I believe that I was using a drop spindle, or maybe when I had the Nano, I might have been experimenting on the Nano e-spinner with this. So these are some beautiful kind of rusty browns and some greens, again, kind of that same color theme. You can tell I have a palette. This is an organic Polworth. And so this is what's left of what was a 4-ounce braid. So I'm excited to incorporate that in and just kind of bring in that history and that connection to my beginning in spinning. The next color is these amazing oranges. And if you don't know, orange is one of my favorite colors. So we have these bright oranges and these darker oranges and these greeny oranges. And in this pack, this is a Ramadale cross. And so these really play well with the fibers that I have with Shetland and Ramadale CVM. Took some more of that white Cormo and I dyed it in this greeny yellow color. So I'm really excited to see how this turns out. And so with my contrast colors, I took all of those locks that I had. These are the oranges from the Fossil Fiber Bricolage blending kit. And so these are a Ramadale cross. And I think it's a cross. I don't know what it's crossed with, but the way it's behaving, I'm going to say it's crossed with some sort of long wool, like maybe like a Romney or something that's got a little longer staple, maybe not as fine crimped as the Ramadale. And then these are other two. So I have this kind of yellowish green. I don't know how well that's translating on the camera. And then I also have what I was going to mix into my main color, But as I started to see it with these, I kind of like the story that this is telling. And so I wanted to see how I might be able to mix these together. This was something that I had dyed. It's one of the mystery wools from the guild. It's a different one. I don't think I've used it in this one. But it was kind of this beautiful green color on a brown. And so it kind of adds this neat interest here. So I like those two together. And then as I look at these, this is a little brighter than I want to mute these colors a little bit. And so another way I can mute those colors is by bringing in some of this mystery kind of longer wool. So this is in the mix of the blue, and this is also in the mix of the trim color, that kind of auburn color. And I also might try to add that in with my second main color, that gray, and see if that might kind of tone down that gray a little bit and add a little more brown to it. So that might be a little consistency that this will bring in. So I don't know if I want to blend these colors together and add in some of this brown and see how that creates a heathered, muted look. I also think that this would work really well to add in some of this brown into this blue, and that will help mute that down a little bit more. But so I want to kind of play with these a little bit and see what mixes will come together. So I know I want to do these together. So I think that will be a good one. So I'll probably do maybe I'll do 90% of this blue green or this yellow green, and then maybe 5% of each of these, and see how that blends up. And then this one, maybe I'll do 90% and 10%. Let's see how that works. And then maybe I'll do these in a way, or a proportion to the colors that I have, and see how mixing those colors together might change. I'm also a little bit worried about how that's going to look. So this will be the trim colors, so they won't be next to each other because these will be in the middle of the body. So I'm a little bit worried, like this is a little close. So maybe I'll try mixing these two first and see what color that creates. And then I can always add this color in and see, maybe it does create a little different look, but it doesn't look too similar to this. And we'll kind of see how that goes and see how that blends in. Blended up these contrast colors. So here's the blue that has some of the browns and grays. And then this is the green that has some browns and grays in it as well. They're very muted, which is what I was going for. And then I had these oranges that I was kind of playing around with. This is just the lighter oranges together. This one is all the oranges together, the 3 different colors. And then this one, I believe, has some of the brown mystery wool in it. Or no, I'm sorry. This one is the 2 darker oranges blended together with a little bit of the trim color as well, to kind of bring that continuity. So I got what I was aiming for, and so I knitted up the swatch, and in the swatch you'll see that I've got 2 different main color swatches. So this one I did with the gray as the main color 1 and the blue as the main color 2. And this one I've reversed those. And you can see how this pattern really makes a difference in how you hold those main colors together. So I'm glad the pattern recommended knitting swatches showing or using those switched. And so I'm really glad I did that, because I ended up originally liking this one a little bit better, and this one looked a little more muted, but as I blocked it and as I stepped away from it, I actually liked this one a little better. So that blocking also helped. But then when I got into these contrasting colors in the striping pattern, I didn't love them as much. These are the 2 different oranges. So I did the one with the trim mixed in, and then the other one was the brighter color. Or I'm sorry, the little more muted color. I didn't use the brighter color in this one. And then I did the green and it kind of gets lost in there. I didn't really love that. And the same thing with the blue. Like I felt like that kind of got lost in there as well. So from this, I decided I want to change this up. I know I was dead set on this auburn color being the trim, but I decided, what if this replaced the gray as the one of the main colors? Now for colors 2.0. So I knit up the swatches of the first colors that I blended, and then I decided I want to make a few changes. And I think one of the changes is taking the trim color, which I was so adamant that I was going to make the trim color, and lighten it up a little bit. I don't know if you can see that. And so I added some of the gray CVM, added some of the brown mystery wool into there, and I added a little bit of that Polworth and some of the dark orange from the contrast color from the Fossil Fiber Bricolage partnership to kind of create this kind of muted brown, brownish orange. So I want to use this as a replacement for that gray contrast main color. So it'd be the navy, the blues, and this orangey brown. So I'm excited to see how those work together. And then I decided to brighten up my contrast colors that go across the center of the sweater. And so I like the brighter orange, so I kept the bright orange and the yellowish orange of the Ramadan cross. And I added in some of the Leicester Longwool and some of the gray CVM from Eris into there to kind of lighten that up. And I did a similar thing here with the green, where I added in some of the gray from the gray CVM and some of the Leicester Longwool. So it kind of gives that blend of the fine wools and a little bit of that long wool. And then the bright blue I blended with, again, that same mix with a little bit of the CVM and a little bit of the Leicester Longwool. And so I'm excited to see how these spin up, and using this as the second main color, or one of the main colors. As I knit up the swatch, that'll help determine which one is going to be the primary one. All right, so let's see the results of the second attempt at blending some colors. And spoiler alert, I really like this one, and I think I found it. So again, I used the blue. I continued to use that one. And then I blended together a bunch of these oranges. So those are what I used for my main colors. And then I blended up these contrast colors a little bit differently to brighten them up a little bit. So those became the swatch. So again, I alternated my main colors to see which one I liked best. And in this one, I liked the blue, the way it really kind of mutes into that and just kind of mellows out that orangey brown. So I think this is the main color pattern that I'm going to use. And then I'm really happy with how these brighter colors kind of pop through those that combination of colors. So I think that this is the pattern or the color scheme that I'm going to go with. So now my next step is to take these colors and then card them all together, or in those color variations. So all of my wool will be carded and ready to spin. Well, here we are. We've made it to the end of part one. So we've picked out our colors, we've looked at our fibers, we've started to card it all together. So now I have different colors separated, so now I'm going to start blending. So that's my next step. And so you see the oranges here, this is going to be the blue combination, and then we have our contrast colors, this bright blue, we've got this green yellow color, and we've got the orange. So I'm really excited to put all these together, work on that final carding, and then move on to spinning. So I hope you'll join me for part two, where I'm going to spin this fiber up. I'm going to show you how I am going to go through that spinning process, do some more swatch gauging, and dig a little deeper into the structure of that yarn. So I hope you'll come back once I get to that point. But remember, this is a slow craft, and so this is going to take a little while for me to get through the final carding and then moving on to the spinning. So I'm curious, how many friends did you count? I counted 12. So there's 12 different friends that are part of this fiber. And honestly, there's more than that. That's just the direct connections, but there's so much that comes through this community from the methods I've learned, from the experience I've gained, from the people that I've chatted with, like just trying to learn and troubleshoot some of this stuff as well. So this is really part of a community. It's really fun. Hope you'll follow along on Instagram and then on YouTube. But now it's time to get spinning. So I'll see you in the next part.